Napoleon Bonaparte, one of history's most famous figures, was a man of immense ambition and military genius. Rising from modest beginnings on the island of Corsica, he eventually crowned himself Emperor of France and built an empire that spanned much of Europe. Yet, his extraordinary life came to an end under horrific and puzzling circumstances, far removed from the grandeur and power he once wielded. This video delves into the tragic and gruesome details surrounding Napoleon's final years, exploring the physical and mental deterioration that led to his death in exile, as well as the lasting legacy of the once mighty conqueror. The rise of Napoleon Bonaparte. Born on August 15, 1769, Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power was driven by ambition, strategic brilliance, and ruthless determination. Starting as a young military officer, he quickly climbed the ranks, becoming first consul of France by age 30 and later emperor. His victories in Italy and Egypt solidified his status, turning a demoralized army into a victorious force in Italy and gaining legendary status after his return from Egypt, despite military setbacks. Seizing the instability caused by the French Revolution, Napoleon swiftly took control of Paris and the political system, presenting himself as a protector of liberty. However, his lust for power soon became apparent, culminating in his self-coronation as emperor in 1804. His reign was marked by an obsession with his image and absolute control, positioning himself as a modern Caesar and installing his family across Europe. As his empire expanded, so did his ego, leading to a belief in his own invincibility, though foreign monarchs privately despised him. The beginning of the decline. Napoleon's decline began in his late 30s, marking a sharp contrast to the vitality he once embodied. His physical and mental deterioration became evident through chronic headaches, pain, and an erratic sexual appetite, possibly linked to an underlying medical condition. Some historians speculate that syphilis, common in the military at the time, may have contributed to his symptoms. Napoleon's first wife, Josephine, had suffered from venereal diseases, which may have compounded his health issues. The stress of ruling an empire and constant warfare intensified his struggles. By age 33, Napoleon was experiencing severe stomach pain, mood swings, and erratic decision-making. His physical condition worsened further. By 1806, he had eye inflammation, and by 1811, his speech slurred, and he developed a tremor in his left leg. Once an unstoppable force, Napoleon was now debilitated by his failing health. The theory of syphilis and tabes dorsalis. Many of these symptoms are consistent with tabes dorsalis, the late-stage manifestation of syphilis that affects the spinal cord. Though the diagnosis remains debated, the evidence is striking. Napoleon's physical decline was evident to those around him, but few dared to speak of it openly. His generals blamed exhaustion, while his courtiers attributed his behavior to stress. However, his condition was rapidly deteriorating, and by 1815, the end was near. Exile on St. Helena. After his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, Napoleon was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, a volcanic rock far from Europe. At 46, he arrived on the island, a shadow of his former self, bloated, exhausted, and in poor health. His life in exile was marked by physical and emotional decay. The once great emperor now spent his days in isolation, far from the grandeur of his imperial courts. He suffered from daily vomiting, loss of appetite, and a swollen abdomen that became increasingly distended with fluid. The smell of decay began to permeate the rooms where Napoleon resided, and his symptoms mirrored those that had occurred 2 years earlier during the campaign at Dresden, where he had been struck by violent stomach pain and diarrhea. The physician in charge of his care during this period described swelling in his legs, a weak pulse, and persistent shivering that would not stop. His body was betraying him, and Napoleon, for the first time in his life, was powerless to change his fate. The slow collapse. Napoleon's decline became a slow, agonizing collapse of both body and mind. Obsessed with his legacy, he began rewriting history, censoring his letters and accusing those around him of betrayal. His paranoia deepened, fearing poisoning to the point of refusing to drink from cups that were not his own. Guards and servants reported strange sounds from his room at night, though he was alone. His temper grew more volatile, transforming the once commanding figure into a frail, suspicious man. Physically, his body deteriorated further, his legs withered, muscles wasted away, and he needed assistance to walk. He spent long hours in bed, unable to speak or move, with every bite of food causing pain. His physician's efforts, leeches, mercury purgatives, and lancing his swollen abdomen, only seemed to worsen his condition. By 1821, Napoleon's body had swelled, and his breathing became labored. Despite his obvious decline, those around him, including his doctors, continued to pretend recovery was possible, and the British governor discouraged any acknowledgement of his imminent death. Napoleon's final days. Napoleon's final days were filled with suffering. He became increasingly frail, and his mind slipped further into confusion. He would often whisper the names of past battles, Austerlitz, Marengo, and Jena, but more often than not, he would remain silent. His temper flared, and he lashed out at those around him. He demanded that food be tested in front of him, convinced that his meals had been poisoned. His suspicions grew more pronounced as his condition worsened. The disease that had ravaged his body had also begun to destroy his mind. On May 4th, 1821, realizing that death was near, Napoleon allowed a priest to administer the last rites. His mouth was dry and he could no longer speak, but he gave a slight nod when asked if he died in the Catholic faith. It was his final deliberate act. The next day, on May 5th, Napoleon Bonaparte, the once feared emperor, the man who had shaped the fate of Europe, passed away at the age of 51. The post-mortem, the autopsy revealed the true extent of Napoleon's physical deterioration. His stomach, almost entirely consumed by ulcers, had blackened and rotted. The doctors removed the organ and placed it in a bowl of alcohol to preserve it. The stench was so overpowering that those present in the room had difficulty bearing it. Though stomach cancer was listed as the official cause of death, rumors began to circulate that Napoleon had been poisoned, possibly with arsenic. The British dismissed these claims, but the French were more inclined to believe that Napoleon had been the victim of foul play. In the days following his death, the house on St. Helena became a mausoleum of decay. The body, wrapped in cloth, lay in a room where the smell of death hung thick in the air. Guards were posted around the house, not to protect it from intruders, but to prevent anyone from witnessing the gruesome sight of the emperor's final resting place. Napoleon, the man who once ruled over Europe, was now a lifeless body, subjected to the same fate as any ordinary man. The funeral and legacy. Napoleon was buried on May 9th, 1821, under a willow tree in the Valley of the Geranium. His body was placed in a simple coffin, and the French lined it with tin. The British governor insisted that the gravestone remain blank, claiming that an inscription would only feed into the legend of Napoleon. This act of denial reflected the British desire to suppress the myth of the French emperor, who had once threatened their empire. Napoleon's death marked the end of an era. His dreams of a lasting dynasty collapsed with the fall of his empire. His only legitimate son, the King of Rome, died in exile at the age of 21, never having ascended to the throne. The monarchy he had destroyed was soon restored by his enemies. Though his empire faded, the impact of Napoleon's legal and political reforms, particularly the Napoleonic Code, endures to this day. His death, however, serves as a haunting reminder of the limits of personal glory and the inevitability of decline. The final irony. The final irony of Napoleon's life lies in the contrast between his once mighty public image and the grim reality of his death. The conqueror who had triumphed at Austerlitz and Moscow ended his days in isolation on a remote island, his body swollen and riddled with tumors. Once a man who dictated terms to kings, he was now a prisoner of disease and time. Despite his genius, he couldn't escape the inevitable decay of his body. His death, marked by pain, paranoia, and regret, serves as a reminder of the fragility of human existence. Though his life ended in defeat, Napoleon's legacy in law, politics, and military strategy endures. And that brings us to the end of Napoleon Bonaparte's tragic and gruesome tale. If you found this video fascinating, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell to stay updated on more incredible tales from history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.